Jerusalem, Jerusalem, all roads lead to you.
Hello, my name is Father Timothy Tighe, and this is our 204th segment of our Journey of Faith in the Light of the Cross. I thank you so much for joining us as we complete our 34th chapter, 34 hours of Bible study. We look up on our screen and we see the theme for this segment. The tension between the Israel of the wilderness and the Judeans of an over-domesticated city elite is revealed in John 7 in the Sukkos or booths observance in Jerusalem. We go to our next screen and we read, John 7:1, after Capernaum, Jesus walked in Galilee, for Judeans sought to kill him. Now the Feast of Booths was near. His brother said, go to Judea so your disciples can see the work you do, for no one who wants to be known acts in secret. If you do these things, show yourself to the world. His brothers, they were really cousins who shared the same table in the house with Mary and Joseph. They looked at Jesus as a performer, but he was really revealed to the world on the cross. We go to our last line. For even his brothers did not believe in him. He said, my time has not yet come. We go to our next screen and we read, in John 6, Moses fed Israel in the wilderness, but he was known much more as a lawgiver and disciplinarian. Thus, a rabbi was considered true to Moses only if he was willing to discipline. So John 5 showed Jesus as a good rabbi, risking all to find and discipline the healed man who was a sinner, for the Judeans accused Jesus of pampering sinners. To discipline means to teach how to act and to correct bad conduct, much more than to punish somebody. We go on to our next screen and we read, but the Babylonian exiles saw the fragmented, this is the people of the land, as mixed blood, and law forbids eating with mixed blood people or marrying them. This is in 1 or 2 Chronicles. Jesus' eternal blood overcame mixed blood concerns, so he wasn't concerned about that. Jesus fed the people like Moses, and he corrected their conduct by working with their struggles. He gave his eternal bloodline to detox sin and to gather a new universal and eternal family bloodline. Jesus did not exclude sinners as Judah excluded them as dead to the world, but called them to allow God to redeem the curses of sin into blessings of life-giving love, which called most fragmented to heroic faith. God can even take your brokenness, as he took Jesus' brokenness on the cross, and turn it into a blessing. We go on to the next screen and we read, the synagogue members were considered an elite 20% who had achieved God's life-giving order by zealous observance of the Mosaic law. They had clothing codes, purification rituals, and food laws from Babylon that never could have been observed in the wilderness, and they weren't. Yet they romanticized that they were seed of their desert ancestors who resembled much more the fragmented, broken people Jesus fed at Tiberias. Jesus' kingdom threatened all limited kingdoms, and we emphasize the limited mind when your world is confined to limits. We go on to our next screen and we read, John 7:10, later Jesus went up to the feast in secret. The Judeans asked, where is he? The crowd spoke quietly about him. Some said he was a good man, others he deceives the crowd. None spoke openly for fear of the Judeans. So we see Judeans the educated and the crowd are two distinct worlds, and the crowd better be quiet. Later, Jesus began to teach in the temple. His teachings amazed the Judeans. They wondered how he was so learned in letters without formal learning of letters. That's how they described education. We go on to our next screen and we read, John 7:16, Jesus said, my teaching is his who sent me. Whoever speaks on his own seeks his own glory. But he who seeks the glory of the one who sent him is true. In him is no deceit, and the word is exactly like guile Nathanael in chapter 1. Moses gave you the law, yet you seek to kill me. The crowd said, you have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? Jesus answered, "One work," and he's referring to chapter 5, "I did, and you all marvel." The crowd did not think the Judeans sought to kill Jesus because they knew the Romans forbid it and the law forbid it. One work refers to the healing in John 5 as if there was no chapter 6, which makes a lot of scholars wonder. Jesus said Moses passed down circumcision from the fathers, especially Abraham. So you circumcise a man on Sabbath. Why are you so angry at me for healing a man on Sabbath? Much in chapter 7 refers back to the healing in John 5 because both took place in the temple in Jerusalem, and chapter 6 was in Capernaum on the other side of Galilee. Booths in Jerusalem lacked any sense of wilderness. It doesn't make sense to celebrate it. For booths began when field workers lived in booths during the fall harvest. The fields and booths tended to recall the wilderness journey of their ancestors, so they turned it into an observance, a feast day. We go on to our next screen and we read, "On the last day of booths in the fields, they prayed for rain for the winter wheat and the spring crops. In Jerusalem, they carried water up from the springs of Gihon to the temple, praying for the same winter rains." John 7:37. On the last day of booths, Jesus cried out, "If anyone is thirsty, come to me, and let the one who believes in me drink." Jesus was saying, "I am the living water you truly long for in this world's bewildering wilderness, to guide you on your journey to the eternal Jerusalem." We go to our next screen and we read, 39, he was referring to the Spirit believers would receive later on. For there was no Spirit yet because Jesus had not yet been glorified. And we go on. Cities used the limits of law to exclude wilderness dangers. So there was nothing wilderness in the cities. The educated Judean elite in Jerusalem had suffocated God's presence with their limits, and thus suffocated the spirit and glory of Jerusalem. And the springs of Gihon could not revive Jerusalem. Jesus said he was the springs of living water of God's presence, which was reviving God's spirit and glory when he said these words. We go on to our next screen and we read, Jerusalem's destruction in 70, 40 years after the death of Jesus, left the church wandering in the wilderness of the Roman Empire. But the church felt alive, for it breathed the spirit and glory of God's presence through the waters of baptism. John's church believed Israel's wilderness ancestors, with all their problems, lived much more heroically than Jerusalem's Judean elite, who thought they lived heroically. And Israel's journey in the wilderness tradition of sukkahs, booths, was carried on in the church as they journeyed to the eternal Jerusalem, the church. We go on to our next screen and we read, the chief priests and Pharisees asked the police why they had not arrested Jesus, because they had been ordered to do it. They said, no one has ever spoken like this. The Pharisees said, surely you have not been deceived, have you? Only this crowd has, who are cursed. Notice the word, they are cursed, for they do not know the law. The crowd was cursed as the unforgivable walking dead. But those later baptized journeyed heroically with the church in the spirit and Shekinah of their Sinai ancestors. We go on to our last screen and we read, the tension between the Israel of the wilderness and the Judeans of an over-domesticated city elite is revealed in John 7 in the sukkahs or booths observance in Jerusalem. I want to thank you so much for joining us for this 204th segment. I want to thank my staff, Jason Brown, Martha Velez, and Anthony Staiano, who has helped us complete so much work, 34 hours. Thank you again for joining us. I hope you continue.
That we can live in peace in Jerusalem this time. Yes, we can live in peace in Jerusalem this time.